y'all. Woo! To the beat, y'all, and you don't stop. Yes, yes, y'all. And you don't stop. That body rock. Yes, yes, y'all. Woo! To the beat, y'all, and you don't stop. Yes, yes, y'all. And you don't stop. That body rock. Clap your hands, everybody. Clap, 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 clap your hands, everybody. Clap, 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 clap your hands, everybody. You know I got what it takes. Cause I'm Curtis Blow, and y'all need to know that these are the birds. Brakes on a car for a superstar. Brakes to make you go real far, yo. Brakes to lose and brakes to win. And these here brakes will never end. And these here brakes will never end. And these are the brakes. Bring it up, bring it up, bring it up. Party people, bring it up. Sing bring it up. Everybody, bring it up. Check this out. 1, 2. These are the brakes. This is Curtis Blow. Shouting out Ace Skills, Dr. Luke, Crafty Cuts.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and silence your cell phones. Our program will begin shortly.
All my people's out in London, finger licking records. Yeah, and I'm Curtis Blow, and I still want you to know these are the birds. Hit me. I feel good, like I knew that I would. Feel good, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Red Hat Executive Vice President and Chief People Officer, Delissa Alexander, and Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer, Tim Yaton.
Hi, everyone. We're so excited to kick off this afternoon, day 2 at the Red Hat Summit. We've got a stage full of stories about people making amazing contributions with open source.
Well, you know, Delissa, you and I have both been coming to this event for a long, long time. So what keeps you coming back?
Well, you know, the summit started as a tech conference, an amazing tech conference, but now it's expanded to be so much more. This year, I'm really thrilled that we're able to showcase the power of open source going way beyond the data center and beyond the cloud. And I'm here also on a secret mission.
Oh,
Yes, I'm here to make sure you don't make too many bad dad jokes.
so there's no such thing as a bad dad joke. They're just dad jokes. They're supposed to be bad. But I promise to keep it to my limit. But I do have one
Okay.
that may appeal to the geeks in the audience.
Okay.
So what do you call a serving tray full of empty beer cans?
You
An
got
open
me.
container platform. Right?
Well, that is your one.
Just the one?
That's one.
I only got a budget of one? Okay. All right, well, you know, I have to say though, in all seriousness, I'm with you. You know, I've been coming to the summit since its first one, and I always love to hear what new directions people are exploring, what ideas they're pursuing, and the perspectives they bring. And this afternoon, for example, you're going to hear a host of different perspectives from a lot of voices you wouldn't often see on a technology main stage in our industry. And it's all part of our open source series live. And I have to say, there's been a lot of good buzz about this session all week, and I'm truly honored and inspired to be able to introduce them all later this afternoon. I can tell you over the course of the last few weeks, I've spent time with all of them, and every single one of them is brilliant, they're an innovator, they're fearless, and they will restore your faith in the next generation.
You know, I can't wait to see all these stories. All of that, and we've got some special guests that are surprised in store for us. You know, one of the things that I love about the people that are coming on the stage today with us is that so many of them teach others how to code, and they're also bringing more people that are very different into our open source communities, helping our communities be more innovative and impactful.
Right.
And speaking of innovative and impactful, that's the purpose of our Open Brand project, right?
That's right. We're actually in the process of exploring a refresh of our mark. And we'd really like your help as well, because we're doing this all in the open. We've been doing it already in the open. And so please join us in our feedback zone booth at the summit to tell us what you think. Now, it's probably obvious, but I'm big into Red Hat swag. I've got the shirt, I've got my pin, I've got the socks.
Nice. Very nice.
So this is really important to me personally, especially that when my 15-year-old daughter sees me in my full regalia, she calls me Fedorable.
Okay, that joke was fed horrible, and you're done
It wasn't
today.
that bad.
You
It
hit
wasn't
your
that
limit.
I got way more of those.
Well, Tim, thanks for helping us set the stage for today. It's time to get started with our first guest.
All right, I'll be back soon. Thank you.
The people I'm about to bring on the stage are making outstanding contributions to open source in new and brave ways. They are the winners of the 2018 Women in Open Source Awards. The Women in Open Source Awards was created to highlight the contributions that women are making to open source and to inspire new generations to join the movement. Our judges narrowed down the panel, a very long list, to just 10 finalists, and then the community selected our 2 winners that we're honoring today. Let's learn a little bit more about them.
A lot of people assume because of my work that I must be a programmer or engineer, when in fact I specifically chose a communications path for my career. But what's fascinating to me is I was able to combine my love of communications and helping people with technology in interesting ways. I'm able to not be bound by the assumptions that everybody has about what the technology can and should be doing, and can really ask the question of, what if it could be different?
I always knew I wanted to be in healthcare just because I feel like it has the most impact in helping people. A lot of what I've been working on is geared towards developing technology in the health space towards the developing world.
One of the coolest things about open source is bringing people together, working with other people to accomplish amazing things.
There's so many different projects that you could get involved in. You don't even have to be the smartest person to be able to make impact. But when you're actually developing for someone, I think it's really important to understand the need. When you're pushing innovation forward, sometimes the cooler thing is not the best thing.
For both of us to have kind of a healthcare focus, I think it's cool because so many people don't think about healthcare as being something that open source can contribute to.
It took a while for it to even get to the stage where it is now, where people can open source develop on concepts in health. And it's an untapped potential to moving the world forward.
This award is really about highlighting the work of dozens of women and men in this open source community that have made this project possible. So I'm excited for more people to kind of turn their open source interest into healthcare, because I think there is just so much unlocked potential.
I am so honored to be able to welcome to the stage some brilliant women in open source. First, one of our esteemed judges, Denise Dumas, VP of Software Engineering at Red Hat. She's going to come up and share her insights on the judging process. Denise?
Hi, Melissa.
Good to see you.
You too.
So you've been judging since the very beginning, 2015. What does this being a judge represent to you? What does the award mean to you?
Oh man, you know, every year it becomes more and more challenging to select the Women in Open Source winner, because every year we get more nominees, and the quality of the submissions, well, there are women involved in so many fabulous projects. So the things that I look for are the things that I value in open source. Initiative, using technology to solve real-world problems, a work ethic that includes send patches and altruism. And I think that you'll see that this year's nominees, this year's winners, really epitomize those qualities.
Totally agree.
Shall we bring them
Yes,
on?
let's bring them on. Let's welcome to the stage Zoe DeGay and Dana Lewis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we taking a picture?
All right, let's take a seat. Well, you both have had an interesting path to open source. Zoe, you're a biomedical engineering student and you have a degree in public relations. Tell us, what led to your involvement in open source?
Yeah, so coming to college, knew I was interested in science, but I didn't want to be a medical doctor, and I didn't want to get involved in wet lab research. So through classes I was taking, that's why I did biomedical engineering, and through classes I was taking, I found the classroom to be very dry, and I didn't know how can I apply what I'm learning. And so I got involved in a lot of entrepreneurship on campus. And through one of the projects, I was asked to build a front end. And I had no idea how to go about doing that. And I had some basic rudimentary coding knowledge. And what happened was I was digging deep and then found an open source library that was basically building a similar thing that I needed. And that is where I learned about open source, and I went from there. And now I'm really excited to be able to contribute to many communities and work on a variety of projects.
Amazing contributions. Dana, tell us about your journey.
Well, I come from a non-traditional background, but I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 14. And over the next couple years, got really frustrated with the limitations of my own diabetes devices, but felt like I couldn't change them because that wasn't my job as a patient. But it was actually through social media I discovered someone who had solved one of the problems that I had been having, which was getting data off my diabetes device. And that's how I learned about open source, was when he was willing to share his code with me. So when we turned around and made this hybrid closed-loop artificial pancreas system, it was a no-brainer to make our work open source as well.
That's right, absolutely. And we see you using the hashtag #WeAreNotWaiting. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this hashtag was created actually before I even discovered the open source diabetes world, but I love it because it really illustrates exactly the fact that we have this amazing technology in our hands, in our pockets, and we can solve some of our most common problems. So yes, you could wait, but waiting is now a choice. With open source, we have the ability to solve some of our hardest problems, even problems dealing with life and death.
That's great.
So Zoe, with the vaccine carrier system that you helped to build, how were you able to identify the need in order to build it?
Yeah, so I think before you even build anything, you first need to understand what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And that really was the case when starting this project. I got to collaborate with engineers in Kampala, Uganda, and travel there and actually interview stakeholders in the medical field, medical doctors, as well as pharmaceutical companies. And from there, I really got to understand the health system there, as well as how do vaccines enter the country and how can we solve this problem. And that's how we came up with the solution for an IoT-based vaccine carrier tracking system. I think it's really important, especially today when products might be flashy, to also understand what is the need behind it and how do we solve problems with these products. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how both of you have this interest in healthcare. Dana, how do you see open source playing a role in healthcare? But first, before you answer that, tell us about your shirt.
So this shirt has the code of my artificial pancreas on it. And I love it as an illustration of, thank you. I love it as an illustration of how open source is more than we think it is. I've just been blown away by the contributions of people in my open source communities, and I think that that is what we should apply to all of healthcare. There's a lot of tools and technologies that are solving real world problems, and I think if we take what we know in technology and apply it to healthcare, we'll solve a lot of problems more quickly, but it really needs to be recognizing everything in open source. It's the documentation, it's the collaboration, it's the problem solving, it's working together to take technologies that we didn't previously think were applicable and finding new ways to apply it.
It's a great answer. Zoe?
Yeah, I think especially where healthcare is related to people, and open source is the right way to collaborate with people all over the world. Especially in the project I've been working on, we're looking at vaccines in Uganda, but the same system can be applied in any other country, and then you can look at cross countries health systems there, and from there it becomes bigger and bigger. And I think it's really important for people who have an idea and want to take it further to know that open source is a way that you could actually take your idea further, whether you have a technical background or not. So yeah.
Your stories are amazing. You're just an inspiration for everyone in open source. I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. Let's give another round of applause to our winners.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good job, shutters.
You know, the tagline for the award is honor, celebrate, inspire, and I feel like we've been doing that today very, very well, and I know that so many people have been inspired today, especially the next generation, who will go on to do things we can't even dream of yet.
Device called a Raspberry Pi. So it's not a real pie.
Then I'm gonna press. Oh, did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
That was the sound of success. All right, now go put your.
I think collab's important because we need to make sure we get younger children interested in technology so that they understand the value of it, but also that there are a lot of powerful women in technology and they can be one of them.
Just tap the screen to take a picture. Wait, no, stop. Oh my God. Oh, wait. Wait, how are you supposed to
like this? Yeah. It's hard at first, but then when you figure it out and you have your friends to help you, it's easy.
I hope after this experience, maybe we'll get some engineers and some girls working at Red Hat.
Yes, I got a sword.
So cool, right? Well, we have some special guests to invite to the stage now. I'd like to invite Tim back and also introduce Red Hat's own Jamie Chappell, along with our collab students. Please welcome Gabby, Tenzin, Sophia, Lyric, Camilla, and Evelyn. We've been waiting for this moment for a while. We're so excited to hear all about your experiences. But Jamie, first, tell us about Collab.
Sure. So Collab is Red Hat's way of teaching students about the power of open source and collaboration. We kicked off a little over a year ago in Boston, and that was so successful that we decided to embark on an East Coast tour. So in October, we made stops at middle schools in New York, DC, and Raleigh. And these amazing people over here are from that tour. And this week, they have gone from student to teacher. So they've hosted 2 workshops where they have taught Red Hat Summit attendees how to turn Raspberry Pis into digital cameras. They assigned a poem, Song of the Open Road by Walt Whitman. And they've been working at the Open Source Stories booth, helping to curate photos for an installation we're excited to finish up tomorrow.
So amazing. And welcome, future women in open source. We want to know all about your experiences getting involved. Can you tell us, Tenzin, tell us about something you've learned?
So during my experience with Collab, I learned many things, but however, the ones that I valued the most were open source and women empowerment. I was just so fascinated about how women were creating and inventing things for the development of technology, which was really cool. And I also learned about how open source was free and how anyone could access it. And so I also learned that many people could add information to it so that other people could learn from it and use it as well. And during Monday's dinner, I got this card saying that the world needed more people like you. And I realized through my experience with CoLab that the world does not only need people like me, but also everyone else to create great technology.
Yeah,
That's
great
awesome.
message.
Very nice. So, ladies, you know, as you were working on your cameras and the coding, was there a moment in time that you had an aha experience that I'm really getting this and I can do this?
Yes, there was an aha moment because midway through, I kind of figured out, well, this piece of the camera went this way, and this piece of the camera didn't go that way. And I also figured out different features that were on the camera during the camera build.
Very good. Yep.
I had 2 aha moments while I was making my camera. The first one was during the process of making my camera where I realized I was doing something wrong and I had to collaborate with my peers in order to troubleshoot. And we realized I was doing something wrong multiple times and I had to redo it, but finally I felt accomplished because I finished something I worked hard on. And my second aha moment was after I finished building my camera, I just stared at it and I was in shock because I built something great and it was such a nice feeling.
So we talked a lot about collaboration when we were at the lab. Tell us about how learning about collaboration in the lab is different than in school.
So in school, collaboration is usually few and far between. So when we went to CoLab, it allowed us to develop new skills of creativity and joining our ideas with others to make something bigger and better. And also it allowed us to practice lots of cooperation. An example of this is in my group, everybody had a different problem with their Pi camera, and we had to use our different strengths to help each other out, and everybody ended up assembling a working Pi camera.
Great. Great message.
Collaboration in CoLab and the school is very different because in CoLab we were more interactive, more hands-on, and we had to work closer together to achieve our own goals. And collaboration isn't just about working together, but also combining different ideas from different people to get a product that is so much better than the sum of its parts.
That's great.
So, girls, one other interesting observation, this actually may be for the benefit of the folks in our audience, but out here we have represented literally hundreds and hundreds of companies, all of whom are going to be actually looking for you to come to work for them after today.
But you're going to work for Red Hat.
That's right, yeah, we get first dibs, that's right. But you know, if you were to have a chance to speak to these companies and say, what is it that they could do to help inspire, you know, your friends and peers and get them excited about open source, what would you say to them?
Well, I'm pretty sure we all have a digital device that has an app store. And I'm pretty sure we've all downloaded an app on that app store. Well, instead of us downloading apps, the computer companies or the phone companies, they could give us the opportunity to program our own app and we could put it on the app store.
Great idea.
Absolutely. Well, I've got to tell you, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and I think you're all going to be an inspiration to her for the same reason.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
So I see you brought some cameras. Why don't we go down and take a picture?
Let's do it. All right, I will play my very proud CoLab moderator role. All right, so 1, 2, 3, CoLab, okay? 1, 2, 3, CoLab. Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to leave you and let you tell us more open source stories.
All right, well, thank you.
Do a great job.
Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your time at Summit. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Pretty awesome, pretty awesome. And I would just like to say, they truly are fedorable. That's just, So if you would like to learn more, as you heard the girls say, they're actually manning our open source stories booth at the Summit. You know, please come down and say hello. The stories you've seen thus far from our Women in Open Source winners as well as our CoLab students are really bringing to life the theme of this year's summit, the theme of ideas worth exploring. And in that spirit, what we'd like to do is explore another one today, and that is how open source concepts thrive and expand in the never-ending organic way that they do, much like the universe metaphor that you see us using here. It's expanding in new perspectives and new ideas with voices beyond the traditional, all starting to make open source much bigger than what it was originally started as. In fact, open source goes back a long way, long before actually the term existed. In those early days, in the early 80s and the like, most open source projects were sort of loosely organized collections of self-interested developers who were really trying to build low-cost, more accessible replicas of commercial software. Yet here we are, 2018, the world is completely different. The open source collaborative development model is the font of almost all original new innovation in software. And they're driven from communities of innovation. Red Hat, of course, has been very fortunate to have been able to build an extraordinary company whose development model is harnessing these open source innovations and in turning them into technologies consumable by companies even for their most mission-critical applications. The theme for today, though, is we see open source, this open source style collaboration and innovation moving beyond just software. This collaborative community innovation is starting to impact many facets of society, and you're starting to see that even with the talks we've had already today. And this explosion of community-driven innovation is, again, akin to this universe metaphor. It expands in all directions in a very organic way. So for Red Hat, being both beneficiaries of this approach and stewards of the open collaboration model, we see it important for us to give voice to this broader view of open source stories. Now, when we say open source in this context, of course, we're meaning much more than just technology. It's the style of collaboration, the style of interaction. It's the application of open source style methods to the innovation process. It's all about accelerating innovation and expanding knowledge. And this can be applied to a whole range of human endeavors. Of course, in education, as we just saw today on stage, in agriculture and AI, as the open source stories we shared at last year's summit, in emerging industries like healthcare, as we just saw, in manufacturing, even the arts. All these are areas that are now starting to benefit from collaboration and driving innovation. But we see this potentially applying to almost any area of human endeavor. And it expands, again, organically, expanding existing communities with the addition of new voices and new participants, catalyzing new communities and new innovations in new areas, as we were talking about, and even being applied inside organizations so that individual companies and teams can get the same collaborative innovation effects. And most profound, certainly in my perspective, is sort of the limitless bounds that exist for how this open collaboration can start to impact some of humankind's most fundamental challenges. We saw a couple of examples, in fact, with our Women in Open Source winners. That's amazing, but it also potentially is just the tip of the iceberg. So we think it's important that these ideas, as they continue to expand, are best told through storytelling, because it's a way that you can embrace them and find your own inspirations. And that's fundamentally the vision behind our open source stories. And it's all about building on what's come before. The term we use often is standing on the shoulders of giants. For a lot of the young people that you've seen on this stage and you're about to see on this stage, you all are those giants. You're the reason, and our peers around the world are the reasons that open source continues to expand. For them, you are those giants. The other thing is we all, particularly in this room, those of us who've been around open source, we have an open source story of our own. How were you introduced to the power of open source? How did you engage a community? Who inspired you to participate? Those are all interesting elements of our personal open source stories. And in most cases, each of them are punctuated by, you heard my question to the girls on stage, an aha moment or aha moments. That moment of realization that enlightens you and causes you to think differently. And to illustrate, I'm going to spend just a few minutes sharing my open source story. For one fundamental reason, I've been in this industry for 38 years. I am a living witness to the entire life of open source going back to the early 80s. I've been doing this in the open source corner of the industry since the beginning. If you've listened to Saron's Command Line Heroes podcast, my personal open story will actually be quite familiar with you because my arc is the same as the first several podcasts that she talked about. I'm sort of a walking history lesson, in fact, of open source. I wound up at most of the defining moments that sort of changed how we did this. Not that I was particularly part of the catalyst, I was just there. You know, I was sort of like the Forrest Gump of open source. I was at all these historical things, but I was never really sure how I wound up there, but it sure was interesting. So with that as a little bit of context, I'm just going to share my aha moments. How did I come to be, you know, a 59-year-old in this industry for 38 years, totally passionate about not just open source driving software innovation, but what open source collaboration can do for humanity. So in my experience, I had 3 aha moments I'd just like to share with you. The first was in the early 80s, and it was when I was introduced to the Unix operating system. And by the way, if you have a aha moment in the 80s, this is what it looks like. So 1982 mustache, 2018 beard, that took a long time to do. All right, so as I said, my first aha moment was about the technology itself. In those early days of the 80s, I became a product manager in what at the time was Digital Equipment Corporation's workstation group. And I was immediately drawn to Unix. I mean, certainly this was the day of early Unix workstations, so the user interface was cool, but what I really loved was the ability to do interactive programming via the shell, via basically the command line. And because it was my day job to help figure out where we took these technologies, I was able to both work and learn and play all from the same platform. So that alone was really cool. It was a very accessible platform. The other thing that was interesting about Unix is it was built with networking and engagement in mind. It had its own networking stack built in, TCP/IP of course, and actually built in a set of services. For those who've been around for a while, think back to things like news groups and email lists. Those were the first enablers for cross-internet collaboration, and that was really the elements that really spoke to me, said aha to me, that this technology is accessible and it lets people engage. So that was my first aha moment. My second aha moment came a little bit later. At this point, I was an executive actually running Digital Equipment Corporation's Unix systems division. And it was at a time where the Unix wars were raging, right? All these companies, we all participated in the same standards bodies, but we couldn't agree on anything. And every company's individual interests would trump those of the community. And in the end, it became an existential threat to the platform itself. And we came to the point where we realized we needed to actually do something. We needed to get ahead of this or Unix would be doomed. The particular way we came together was something called COSI, but most importantly, the technique we learned was right under our noses. And it was in the area of distributed computing, distributed client-server computing, inherently heterogeneous. And all these same companies that were fierce competitors at the operating system level were collaborating incredibly well around defining the generation of client-server and distributed computing technologies. And it was all being done in open source, under actually a BSD license initially. And Microsoft was a participant. Microsoft joined the Open Group, which was the converged standards body that was driving this, and they participated to ensure there was interoperability with Windows and .NET at the time. Now, it's no spoiler alert that Unix lost, right? We did, but 2 really important things came out of that sort of formed the basis of my second aha moment. The first is, as an industry, we were learning how to collaborate, right? We were leveraging open source licenses. We realized that these complex technologies are best done together. And that was a huge epiphany for the industry at that time. And the second, of course, is that event is what opened the door for Linux to actually solve that problem. So my second aha was all about how the open collaboration model works. Now, at this point, to be perfectly candid, it's late, probably 1998. Well, we've been acquired by Compaq, so I'm doing basically the same role at Compaq. And I really had embraced what the potential impact of this was going to be to the industry. Linux was gaining traction. There were a lot of open source projects emerging in distributed computing and other areas. So it was pretty clear to me that the business impact was going to be significant. And that registered for me. But there seemed to be a lot more to it that I hadn't really grokked yet. And that's when I had my third aha moment. And that was about the passion of open source advocates, the people. So, you know, at this time, I'm running a big Unix group, but we had a lot of those employees who were incredibly passionate about Linux and open source. They were actively participating sort of outside of work in a lot of things. And they were lobbying more and more for the leadership to embrace open source more directly. And I have to say their passion was contagious, and it eventually spread to me. You know, they were the catalyst for my personal passion, and it also led me to rethink what it is we needed to go do. And that's a passion that I carry forward to this day, the one driven by the people. And I'll tell you some interesting things. Many of those folks that were with us at Compaq at the time have gone on to be icons and leaders in open source today. And many of them actually are involved with Red Hat. So I'll give you a couple of names that some of whom you will know. So John Mad Dog Hall worked for me at the time. He was the person who wrote the first edition of Linux for Dummies. He did that on his own time when he was working for us. He was part of the small team that coined the term open source. Some other on that team that inspired me, Brian Stevens and Tim Burke, who wrote the first version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Actually, they did that in Tim Burke's garage. And of course, Tim's still with Red Hat today. Two other people, you've already seen them on stage today, Denise Dumas and Marco Bill Peter. So it was those people that I was fortunate enough to work with early on who had passion for open source. And much like me, they carry it forward to this day. So the punchline there is they ultimately convinced us to embrace open source aggressively in our strategy. And one of the interesting things that we did was, as a company, we made an equity investment in Red Hat pre-IPO. And a little funny sidebar here, I had to present this proposal to the Compaq board on investing in Red Hat, which was at that time losing money hand over fist. And they said, well, Tim, how do you think they're going to make money selling free software? And I said, well, I don't really know, but their customers seem to love them, and we need to do this. And they approved the investment on the spot. So, I had your faith, and now here we are at a $3 billion run rate as a company. Pretty extraordinary. So for me, the third and final aha was the passion of the people and the way it was contagious. So on my journey, my curiosity led me first to open source and then to Red Hat, and it's been the devotion of my career for over the last 30 years. And I think of myself as pretty literate when it comes to open source and software. But I'd be the first one to admit I would have never envisioned the extent to which open source style collaboration is now being brought to bear on some of the most interesting challenges in society. So the broader realization is that open source and open can really unlock the world's potential when applied in a collaborative, innovative way. So what about you? Many of you, particularly those who have been around for a while, you probably have an open source story of your own. For those that maybe don't, or they're new to open source or new to Red Hat, your open source story may be a single inspiration away. It may happen here at the summit. We certainly hope so. It's how we build the summit to engage you. You may actually find it on this stage when I bring up some of the people who are about to follow me. But this is why we tell open source stories and open source stories live. So each of you hopefully has a chance to think about your story and how it relates to open source. So please take advantage of all the things that are here at the summit and find your inspiration if you haven't already. So next thing is, in a spirit of our telling open source stories, today we're introducing our new documentary film, The Science of Collective Discovery. It's really about citizen scientists using open systems to do serious science in their backyards, in environmental areas and the like. We're going to preview that. I'm going to preview it today, and then please come see it tonight later on when we preview the whole video. So let's take a look.
I may not have a technical scientific background, but I have one thing that the scientists don't have, which is I know my backyard.
So conventional science happens outside of public view. So it's kind of in this black box almost, or up in the ivory tower. And what's exciting about citizen science is that it brings it out into the open.
We, as an environmental community, are engaging with the physical world every day, and you need tools to do that.
We needed to democratize that technology. We needed to make it lightweight. We needed to make it low cost. We needed to make it open source so that we could put that technology in the hands of everyday people so they could go out and make those measurements where they live and where they breathe.
When you first hear about an environmental organization, you mostly hear about planting trees, gardens, things like that. You don't really think about things that are really going to affect you.
They'd wear the air beam or they'd hold it in their hand, making sure not to cover the intake or the exhaust, and just stand here.
We look at the world with forensic eyes and then rebuild what you can't see.
So the approach that we're really centered on puts humans and real issues at the center of the work. And I think that's really at the core of what open source is the social value that underlies all of it.
It really refers to sort of the rights and responsibilities that anyone on the planet has to participate in making new discoveries.
So, really awesome, and a great story, and please come enjoy the full video. So now let's get on with our Open Source Stories Live speakers. You're going to really love the rest of the afternoon. We have 3 keynotes and a demo built in, and I can tell you without exaggeration that when you see and hear from the young people we're about to bring forward, it's truly inspirational, and it's going to restore totally your enthusiasm for the future, because you're going to see some of the future leaders. So please enjoy our Open Source Stories Live. The presentation's coming, and I'll be back to join you in a little bit. Thanks very much.
Please welcome Code Newbie founder, Saran Yitbarek.
Good afternoon. How y'all doing today? Oh, that was pretty weak. I think you could do better than that. How y'all doing today? Wonderful, much better. I'm Saran. I am the founder of Code Newbie. We are the most supportive community of programmers and people learning to code. This is my very first Red Hat Summit, so I'm super pumped, super excited to be here. Today, I'm going to give you a talk, and I'm going to share with you the key to coding progress. Yes, this is a big, big talk, big moment. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to tell you a story. So 2 years ago, I was sitting in my hotel room, and I was preparing for a big talk the next morning. And usually the night before I give a big talk, I'm super nervous, I'm anxious, I'm nauseous, I'm wondering why I keep doing this to myself. All the speakers backstage know exactly what I'm talking about. And the night before, my mom knows this, so she almost always calls just to check in, to see how I'm doing, to see how I'm feeling. And she called about midnight the night before, and she said, how are you? How are you doing? Are you ready? And I said, you know what? This time, I feel really good. I feel confident. I think I'm going to do a great job. And the reason was because 2 months ago, I'd already given that talk. In fact, just a few days prior, they had published the video of that talk on YouTube. And I'd gotten some really, really good positive feedback. I gotten feedback from emails and DMs and Twitter. And I said, man, I know people really like this. It's going to be great. In fact, that video was the most viewed video of that conference. And I said to my mom, I said, you know what? Let's see how many people loved my talk. So the good news is that 14 people liked it, and a lot more people didn't. And I saw this 8 hours before I'm supposed to give that exact same talk, and I said, Mom, I gotta call you back. Do you like how I did that to hang up the phone, as if that's how cell phones work, yeah? And so I looked at this and I said, oh my goodness, clearly there's a huge disconnect. I thought people really liked it, I thought they were into it, and this showed me that something was wrong. But what do you do? What do you do when you're about to give that same talk in 8 hours? How do you begin finding out what the problem is so you can fix it? I have an idea. Let's read the comments. You gotta believe, you gotta have some optimism, come on. I said, let's read the comments because I'm sure we'll find some helpful feedback, some constructive criticism, some insights to help me figure out how to make this talk great. So that didn't happen, but I did find some really colorful language and some very creative ideas of what I could do with myself. Now, there are some kids in the audience, so I will not grace you with these comments, but there was this one comment that did a really great job of capturing the sentiment of what everyone else was saying. I can only show you the first part because the rest is not very family friendly, but it reads like this. How about you talk about coding and not fake societal issues? See, the thing about that talk is it wasn't just a code talk. It was a code and talk. It was about code and something else. That talk touched on code and social justice. I talked a lot about how the things that we build and the way we build them affect real people and their problems and their struggles, and that was absolutely not okay. Not okay. We talk about code and code only, not the social justice stuff. It also talked about code and diversity. Ugh. I think we all know that diversity is really about lowering the bar. It forces us to talk about people and their issues and their problems and their history, and we just don't do that, okay? Absolutely inappropriate when it comes to a tech talk. That talk touched on code and feelings. And feelings are squishy, they're messy, they're icky, and a lot of us feel uncomfortable with feelings. Feelings have no place in technology, no place in code. Ugh. We want to talk about code and code. I want you to show me that API. I want you to show me that new framework, that new tool that's going to solve my problems. That's all I care about. I want to talk about code and give me some more code with it. Now, I host a podcast called Command Line Heroes. It's an original podcast from Red Hat. Super excited about it. If you haven't checked it out, you totally should. And what I love about this show is we talk about these really important moments in open source, these inflection points, moments where we see progress, where we move forward. And what I realized looking back at those episodes is all of those episodes have a code and something. So let's look at a few of those. The first 2 episodes focused on the history of operating systems. And it's a 2-part episode, part 1 and part 2. And there's lots of different ways we can talk about operating systems. For these 2 episodes, we started by talking about Windows and Mac OS, and how these were 2 very powerful, very popular operating systems, but a lot of developers were frustrated with them. They were closed, you couldn't see inside, you couldn't see what it was doing, and I, as a developer, want to know what it's doing on my machine. So we kind of had a little bit of a war. One such developer who was very frustrated said, I'm going to go off and do my own thing. My name is Linus, this thing is Linux. And I'm going to rally all these other developers, all these other people from all over the world to come together and build this new thing with me. That is a code and moment. In that case, it was code and frustration. It was a team of developers, a world of developers, quite literally a world of developers who said, I'm frustrated, I'm fed up, I want something different, and I'm going to do something about it. And what's really beautiful about frustration is it's a sign of passion. We're frustrated because we care so much, we love so deeply that we want to do something better. Next episode is the Agile Revolution. This one was episode 3. Now, the Agile Revolution is a very, very important moment in open source and technology in general. And this was in response to the way that we used to create products. We used to get this huge stack of specs, all these docs from the higher ups, and we'd take it and we'd go to our little corner and we'd quietly code and build. And then a year would pass, 2 years would pass, maybe a few years would pass, and we'd finally burst forth with this new product and hope that users liked it and loved it and used it. And I know some of y'all still do that today. It's okay, no judgment. Now, sometimes that worked, and a lot of times it didn't. But whether or not it actually worked, it hurt. It was painful. These developers did not enjoy this process. So what happened? A dozen developers got together and literally went off into their own and created something called the Agile Manifesto. Now, this was another code and moment. Here, it's code and anger. These developers were so angry that they literally left civilization, went off into a mountain to write the Agile Manifesto. And what I love about this example is these developers did not work at the same company, were not on the same team. They knew each other from different conferences and such, but they really came from different walks of life. And they agreed that they were so angry, they were going to literally rewrite the way we created products. Next example, DevOps, tear down the wall. This one was episode 4. Now this is a bit different because we're not talking about a piece of technology or even the way we code. Here, we're talking about the way we work together, the way that we collaborate. And here we have our operations folks and our developers. And we've created this new kind of weird place thing called DevOps. And DevOps is interesting because we've gotten to a point where we have new tools, new toys, so that our developers can do a lot of the stuff that only the operations folks used to be able to do. That thing that took days, weeks, months to set up, I can do it with a slider. It's kind of scary. I can do it with a few buttons. And here we have another code and moment. And here, that blank is fear for 2 reasons. The operations folks are looking over the developer folks and thinking, that was my job. I used to be able to do that. Am I still valuable? Do I have a place in this future? Do I need to retrain? But there's also another fear, which is, do those developers know what they're doing? Do they understand the security implications? Do they appreciate how hard it is for something to scale and how to do that properly? And I'm really interested and excited to see where we go with that, where we take that emotion. If we look at all of season 1 of the podcast, we see that there's always a code and. Whether it's a code and frustration, a code and anger, or a code and fear, it always boils down to code and feelings. Feelings are powerful. In almost every single episode, we see that that movement forward, that progress, is tied back to some type of emotion. And for a lot of us, this is uncomfortable. Feelings make us feel weird. And a lot of those YouTube commenters definitely do not like this whole feeling stuff. Don't be like those YouTube commenters. If there's one thing you take away from this whole talk, let it be that. Don't be like these YouTube commenters. Feelings are incredibly powerful. So the next time that you're working on a project, that you're having a conversation about a piece of software or a new piece of technology, and you start to get worked up, you get angry, you get frustrated, maybe you get worried, you get anxious, you get scared, I hope you recognize that feeling as a source of energy. I hope you take that energy and you help us move forward. I hope we take that to create the next inflection point, that next step in the right direction. Feelings are your superpowers, and I hope you use your powers for good. Thank you so much.
Please welcome JewelBot's Chief Technology Officer, Sarah Chips.
Wow, there's a lot of you out here. How's it going? I know there's a lot of you East Coasters here as well, and I'm still catching up on that sleep. So I hope you guys are having a great experience. So my name is Sarah. I'm here from New York, I have been a software developer for 17 years. It's longer than some of the people on stage today have been alive. Big thanks to the folks at Red Hat for letting us come and tell you a little bit about JewelBots. So without further ado, I'm going to do exactly that. Okay, so today we're going to do a few things. First, I'm going to tell you why we built JewelBots and why we think it's a really important technology. I'm going to show you some amazing magic. And then we're going to have one of the JewelBots experts come as a special guest and talk to you more about the deep technology behind what we're building. So, show of hands in the audience. Who here was under 18 years old when they started coding? It's hard for me to see you guys. Yep, look around. I'd have to say at least 50% of you have your hands up. All right, keep your hand up if you were under 15 when you started coding. I think more hands up just went there. I don't know how that math works, but awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, I think about half of you have your hands up. That's really neat. I've done a bunch of informal polls on the internet about this. I found that probably about 2/3 of professional coders were under 18 when they started coding. I myself was 11. I was a homeschooled kid, so a little weird. I'm part of the generation, and some of you may be as well, is the reason we became coders is because we were lonely, not because we made a lot of money. So I was 11, and this is before the internet was a thing, and we had these things called BBSs, and you would call up someone else's computer in your town, and you would hang out with people and chat with them and play role-playing games with them. It didn't have to be your town, but if it wasn't, your mom would yell at you for long-distance fees. I got really excited about computers and coding because of the community that I found online. Okay, so this is sometimes the most controversial part of this presentation. I promise you that they dominate our lives in many ways. Even if you don't even know a 9 to 14-year-old girl, even if you just see them on the street sometimes, they are deciding what you and I do on a regular basis. Hear me out for a second here. So, who here knows who this guy is? Okay, you don't have to raise your hands, but I think most people know who this guy is, right? So this guy used to be this guy. And then teenage girls were like, I think this guy has some talent to him. I think that he's got a future. And now he's a huge celebrity today. What about this guy? Just got his first Oscar, just kind of starting out. Well, this guy used to be this guy. And I am proud to tell you that I am one of the many girls that discovered him and decided, this guy has a future. All right, raise your hand if you listen to Taylor Swift. Just kidding, I won't make you do it, but awesome, a lot of people are putting their hands up. That's great. So, Taylor Swift, we listen to Taylor Swift because these girls discovered Taylor Swift. It wasn't a 35-year-old that was like, this Taylor Swift is pretty neat. No one cares what we think. But even bigger than that, these huge unicorns that all of us, some of us work for, some of us wish we invented, these were discovered by young teenage girls. No one is checking to see what apps we're using. They're finding new communities in these platforms and saying, this is how I want to commune with my friends. Things like Instagram, Snapchat, and Musical.ly all start with this demographic, and then we get our cues from them. If you don't know what Musical.ly is, I promise you, ask your nearest 9 to 14-year-old friend. If you don't do that, you'll hear about it in a few years. But this demographic, their futures are all at risk. Everyone here knows how much the field of software development is growing and how important technical literacy is to the future of our youth. However, just 18% of computer science graduates are girls. Just 19% of AP computer science test takers, and just 15% of Google's tech force identify as female. So we decided to do something about that. We were inspired by platforms like MySpace and GeoCities, things like Neopets and Minecraft, all places where kids find something they love, and they're like, okay, to make this better, all I have to do is learn how to code. I can totally do that. So we wanted to do that. So we talked to 200 girls. We went to schools, we sat down with them, and we were like, what makes you tick? What are you excited about? And what we heard from them over and over again is their friends. Their friends and their community are pivotal to them at this time in their lives. So when we started talking to them about a smart friendship bracelet, that's when they started really freaking out. So we built JewelBots, and JewelBots has an active online community where girls can work together, share code that they've built, and learn from each other, help each other troubleshoot sometimes. The way they work is when you are near your friends, your bracelets light up the same color, and you can use them to send secret messages to each other. And you can also code them. So you can say things like, when all my swimming friends are together in the same room, all of our bracelets should go rainbow colors, which is really fun. You can even build games. JewelBots started shipping about 1.5 years ago, after a lot of work. And we are about to ship our 12,000th JewelBot. We're in 38 countries, and we're just getting started. Okay, so now is time for the magic, and I have an important question. Does anyone here want to be my friend?
Pick me.
Anyone
pick
in the
me.
back? All right, did I hear
me.
someone? Did I hear someone?
Me.
Oh, great. Oh, hey,
Me.
Tim. How's it going?
I don't have many friends.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad that we'll be friends. Okay.
That's awesome.
So we just need to pair our JewelBots.
Okay.
Okay, and in order to do that, we're going to hold the magic button in the middle down for 2 seconds. So 1 locomotive, 2 locomotive. Great. And then we got a white flashing. I'm going to do yours again.
I did it wrong.
1 locomotive, 2 locomotive. We're adults. We can't do it. Okay. It's the kids that are smart. All right, so now we get to pick our friendship color. I'm going to pick Red Hat Red. Does that work for you?
Sure.
Okay, great. So now I just picked Red Hat Red, and my JewelBot is saying, all right, Tim's JewelBot, do you want to be my friend? And Tim's JewelBot is like, I'm thinking about it. I think so. Okay, now we're red friends. Okay, great. So now we're red friends. When we're together, our bracelets are going to be red, and I will send you a secret message when it's time for you to come out and introduce the next guest.
Awesome. Well,
Great.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim.
Very good.
I'm so glad we could be friends.
And if only people would start following me on Twitter, it'd be a great day.
Awesome. All right, so now you can see the not so technical part of JewelBots. They use Bluetooth to sense when your friends are nearby, so they work in about a 30-meter, 100-foot range. But to tell you about the actual technology part, I'm going to introduce you to someone much more qualified than I am. Ellie is one of our JewelBots ambassadors. She's an amazing YouTube channel that I would please ask you to check out and subscribe. She's Ellie G. JewelBots on YouTube. She's an amazing coder, and I'm really excited to introduce you today to Ellie Galloway. Come on out, Ellie.
Hello, my name is Ellie Galloway. I'm going to show you how I got coding and then show you some coding in action. I first started coding at age 6 when my dad helped me code a game. Soon after, I programmed for MakeCode for Minecraft. Then, my dad had shown me JewelBot. I keep coding because it helps people. For instance, you could code autocorrect to make it a lot smarter so it can help make people run faster. But what about something more serious? What if you could help answer 911 calls and give alerts? Before we start, I have 3 main steps to share with you. I often use these steps when coding my JewelBot and continue to use some of these now. Step 1, read the instructions. In other words, this means for JewelBot to memorize the colors and positions. A way to memorize these, because it's tricky, is to remember all the colors and positions you will type will be capital. And remember that the positions are either short for northwest, southwest, northeast, and southeast. Step 2, learn the basic codes. When it comes to coding, you need to work your way up. Step 3, discover. Feel free to discover once you mastered everything. Now let's get to coding. Let's first use combining lights. So under void loop, I'm going to put LED.turn on single SW and blue. And before we make sure that this works, we gotta put LED. Okay, now let's type this again. LED.turn on single. Now let's do SW green. Now we have our first sketch. So let's explain what this means. LED is a function to control the LED lights. LED turn on single SW blue tells the SW light to turn blue, and green flashes so quickly with the blue, it creates aqua. Now let's do another code. I'm going to use a more advanced command to make a custom color using RGB. Let's use a soft pink using 255, 105, and 180. Now let's type this in the button press function. So let's do LED dot set light, and now we can do, let's do position 3, 255, 105, and 180. Now, let's explain what this means. The first one stands for the position. The 3 others stand for red, green, and blue. RGBs can only go up to 255, but there are 256 levels. But if you count the first one as 0, then get 255. So let's first, before we move on, let's show how this works. So this is it before. And now let's turn it on to see how our aqua turned out. Now let's see how our RGB light turned out. So we are looking for a soft pink, so let's see how it looks. Think about how much the code you write can help people all around the world. These ideas are just the beginning of opening a new world in technology. A fresh start is right around the corner. I hope this helped you learn a little bit about coding and even made you want to try it out for yourself. Thank you.
All right. I need your help for a second, guys. All right, 1 second, really fast. I know we're short on time. Today is Ellie's 11th birthday, and I think we should give her the biggest present that she's going to get today, and it's something none of us have experienced, and that is thousands of people saying happy birthday, Ellie, at once. So when I say 3, can I get a happy birthday, Ellie? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday, Ellie! All right, go ahead. Great job. That's the best part of my job. Okay, so that's JewelBots. We're just getting started. This number is outdated. We'd almost shipped 12,000 JewelBots. And what I'm really excited to tell you about is that 44% of our users don't just play with their JewelBots, they code them. And they're coding C. Do you even code C? I don't know that you do. But we have 8 to 14-year-olds coding C for their JewelBots. We also have hundreds of events where kids come and they learn how to code for the first time. Here's how you can help. We're open source. So check out our GitHub, get involved. Our community's online. You can see the different features that people are asking for. We're also doing events all over the world. A lot of people are hosting them at their companies. If you're interested in doing so, reach out to us. Thank you so much for coming and learning about JoulBots today. Enjoy the rest of your summit.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome HackerFemo founder, Femi Udlade-Coombs.
Good afternoon, Red Hat Summit 2018. Woo. I'm Femi Udlade-Coombs, founder of HackerFemo. I started coding when I was 8. When I was 9, I set up South London Raspberry Jam through crowdfunding to share my passion for coding with other young people who might not otherwise be exposed to tech. Since then, I've run hundreds of coding and robot workshops across the UK and globally. In 2017, I was awarded an inaugural Legacy Diana Award by Their Royal Highnesses Prince William and Prince Harry for my service to the community. We welcome young people who have autism or, like me, Tourette syndrome, because coding linked me up to a wider community of like-minded people, and I'm trying to do the same for those who might also benefit from this. I also deliver workshops to corporate companies and public organizations whilst feeding back ideas and resources into my community work. We like to cascade our knowledge and experience to other young coders so that they can benefit too. We're learning new tech every day. We're starting to use GitHub to document and manage our coding projects. With Node-RED, we're using the terminal and beginning to really appreciate Linux as we explore cybersecurity and blockchain. It's been quite a journey, from South London to the world-famous Tate Modern Museum, to Bangladesh, to this, my first trip to the States. And soon to China, where I hope to translate my microbit workshops into Mandarin. On this journey, I've noticed it is increasingly important for young coders to have collaborative and community-led initiatives and enterprise and career-ready skills. So my vision now is to run monthly meetups and, in collaboration with business partners, help 100 young disadvantaged people to get jobs in the digital services. In fact, out of all the lessons I've learned from teaching young coders, they all have one thing in common: the power of open source and the importance of developing community. And today, I want to talk about 3 of those lessons. The value of reaching out and collaborating, the importance of partnering with enterprise, and the ability to self-organize and persist, which translated into English means having a can-do attitude, getting stuff done. When you reach out, when you show curiosity, you realize you're not alone in this diverse community, no matter who you are and where you're from. From coding with Minecraft to meeting other young people at jams, I found there are people like me doing things I like doing. I get to connect with them. That's where open source comes to the fore. Second, the open source community is so vast that it crosses continents. It's so enriched with diverse perspectives that it can take you to amazing places, outer space even. That's my code running on the International Space Station's Columbus module. Let's take a listen. And playing was an audio representation for the frequencies recorded in space. my team developed Python code to measure and store frequency readings from the space station, and that was downlinked back to Earth to my email box. Thomas, who's 10, developed an audio file using Audacity and importing it back into Python. How cool is that? Truly, collaboration can take you places you never thought possible, because that's how the community works. When you throw a dilemma, a problem at it, the open source community comes back with answers. When you give, the community gives back tenfold. That's how open source expands. But in that vast starscape, how do you know what to focus on? There are so many problems to solve. Where do I start? Your world, enterprise, and enterprise software is very good at solving problems. What's the big problem? How about helping the next generation be ready for the future? I want to do more for the young coding community, so I'm developing entrepreneurial and business links to get that done. This is a way to promote pathways to deal with future business problems, whether in fintech, healthcare, or supply chains, and meeting the skills shortage. It is a case for investing in emerging communities and young change enablers. Throwing a wider net equates to being fully inclusive with a good representation of diversity. You know, under the shadow of the iconic Shard back in London, there are pockets of deprivation where young people can't even get a job in a supermarket. Many of them are interested in tech in some way. So my goal for the next 3 years is to encourage young people to become an active part of the coding community. With open source, we have the key to unlock the potential for future innovation and technological development. With young coders, we have the people who will have to face these problems. Working on them now, troubleshooting, being creative, connecting with each other, finding a community, and discovering their strengths along the way. For me, after running workshops in the community for a number of years, when I returned from introducing coding to young street kids in Bangladesh, I realized I had skills and experience. So I set up my business, hackerfemo.com, with my first monetized Femi's Coding Bootcamp at Rise London Barclays Bank. It was a sellout, and a few weeks later, so was my second. I haven't looked back since. But it works the opposite way too. All the money raised enabled me to buy robots for my community events, and I was able to cascade my enterprise knowledge across to other young coders too. When you focus on business problems, you get active, enthusiastic support from enterprise, and then you can take on anything. The support is great, and we have tons of ideas, but what does it really take to execute on those ideas, to get things done? Can-do attitudes are what open source needs. You've seen it all this week. We're all explorers, ideators, thinkers, and doers. Open source needs people who can make the ideas happen. Get out there and see them through. Like I did, setting up South London Raspberry Jam as an inclusive space to collaborate and learn together. And that led to organizing the Young Coders Conference. This was about organizing our own 2-day event for our partners in industry to show they value young people and wanted to invest in our growth. It doesn't stop there. Oh no. Now I'm setting up monthly coding meetups and looking at ways to help other young people to access job opportunities in enterprise and digital services. The underlying ethos remains the same in all I do, promoting young people with a desire to explore. Collaborative problem solving. when coding, digital making, and building enterprise. You fled, having the confidence to define our journey and pathways. Always being inclusive. Always encouraging innovation and creativity. Being doers does more than get projects done. Makes us a pioneering force in the community. Dreaming and doing is how we will make exponential leaps. My generation is standing on the shoulders of giants. You, the open source pioneers and the technology you all built. So I'd love to hear about your experiences. Who brought you into the open source community? Who taught you? As we go to upscale our efforts, we encounter difficulties. Have you, and how did you overcome them? Please do come to talk to me. I'll be in the Open Source Stories booth, both today and tomorrow, giving workshops, or visit the Red Hat page on my website, hackathemo.com. I really value your insights. In conclusion, I'd like to ask you to challenge yourself. You can do this by supporting young coders. Find the crowdfunding campaign, kickstart their ideas into reality. I'm proof that it works. It's so awesome to be an active part of the next exponential leap together. Thank you.
So unbelievable, huh? You know, he reminds me of me at that age. Not even close. And I can tell you, I've spent a lot of time with Femi and his mom, Grace. I mean, what you see is what you get. I mean, he's incredibly passionate, committed, and all that stuff he's doing, that long list of things he's doing, he's going to do. So hopefully today you get a sense of what's coming in the next generation, the amazing things that people are doing with collaboration. I'd also like to thank, in addition to Femi, I'd like to thank Saran, Sarah, and Ellie for equally compelling talks around the open source stories. And again, as I mentioned before, any one of you can have an open source story that can be up here inspiring others. And that's really our goal in telling these stories and giving voice to the things that you've seen today. Absolutely extraordinary things are happening out there. And I encourage you to take every advantage you can here this week. And as is our theme for the summit, please keep exploring. Thank you very much.